podcast listeners. Greetings and welcome to another episode of My Shot of Life with your co-host Steven and
Victor.
We're joined today by a good friend and a fan of the show, Matthew. How's it going, Matthew?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Thanks for coming by. And the subject that we have today is actually brought to us from Matthew, so we really appreciate you bringing your suggestion on.
Sure do. Welcome to the show.
So today's episode, we'll be discussing whether or not it's okay to enjoy art. Art including entertainment, music,
media,
anything from people who might otherwise be immoral or people who are featured in the art and entertainment. Today, we'll be sipping on McAfee's Benchmark Old No. 8 brand Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey. Man, I can't say that fast enough. So, guys,
cheers.
Cheers.
Let's get this started. Any initial thoughts?
Surprisingly decent.
Yeah, pretty smooth.
Yeah, surprisingly. What was it, $8 you said?
I believe it was $8.99.
Did you get this at Costco?
Available at your local ABC store or liquor store, depending on wherever you live.
So, following up our segment today, we'll be talking toilet talk. Everyone's favorite subject. Everyone's been talking about it. And then we'll be talking about the art of washing hands in the bathroom, and that is, do you actually wash your hands after you use the bathroom? All the time, sometimes, hopefully all the time. Matthew, I'll let you get started on the topic since it was your subject that you brought in. What are you thinking about the whole Me Too movement and how this relates to your subject?
Well, really, so what kind of spurred this idea in my head was just, so I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan, and all of his movies are great in my opinion, especially like classics like Pulp Fiction and so Kill Bill. And so with Kill Bill, there's been a lot of issues between Tarantino and Uma Thurman that I believe they have recently worked out.
I think he provided her with the videotape to publish in the article.
Background. So there's a scene in Kill Bill, I can't remember if it's Volume 1 or Volume 2, I believe it's Volume 1, where Uma Thurman is driving in a car, and I believe it's supposed to crash. I can't recall. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but so the car that they had was actually altered a bunch. It was like this old beat-up car, and they had it altered, and they had got a new transmission for it, stuff like that. And during filming, it actually broke down. And beforehand, Uma Thurman was like really scared to get into the vehicle. She wanted a stunt double, and Tarantino insisted that she drive the car. So afterwards, Thurman got really injured, had to go to the hospital. And so, and again, Tarantino actually said, I think the other week, that this is one of his biggest regrets of his professional career. And so that has kind of caused me to kind of reevaluate where I stand on Tarantino and his movies, especially because a lot of his movies were produced by the Weinstein Company.
And then we know that the Harvey Weinstein situation right now.
So it's just that's kind of what has got me to think about it. And I mean, being at a liberal university, it's pretty easy for things to get
outraged.
Yeah, people get mad very easily, and so
I imagine so. Yeah. Do you think that's because there's a lot less for them to worry about in their own lives? You know what I mean? Like, so when you're at a liberal arts college, tends to be a more expensive college. Someone usually might be paying for you to go to this college. You understand what I'm saying?
So I'll just go ahead and say it. So I'm at UNC, and being in the Research Triangle, especially near places like Carborough and being in Chapel Hill, there's a lot of liberal personalities among the staff as well as students. So it's almost like, I identify as somewhat definitely left of center, but on most issues,
sure,
people do I think it's all about people kind of get wrapped up in their bubble of influence. I mean, I think you see that with people on the far right as well as people on the
absolutely
very far left. And so, yeah, not to go too off topic, but yeah, I think it's more of just it's maybe less to do with having less to worry about and more to do with just the perpetuation of ideas that, and you don't really have anyone
There's
to
not
say.
many free thinkers. It's just kind of like
Well, it's not. It's again, I don't want to kind of trash people, but
we don't have to go down that route.
Yeah.
It was just more of me asking.
Yeah, I think it's just more like you
question,
keep asking, you're having these thoughts, and then everyone around you is kind of or most people around you are sharing similar thoughts, and so it's just going to continue to build. It makes it very hard to hear dissenting opinions.
So linking this back to our topic today, you're a big fan of Quentin Tarantino's work, as am I. I've seen, I would say, most of his films, with the exception of I haven't finished Jackie Brown or
so I haven't seen that one.
There's one other movie I think of his I have not seen, but we're worried about if he's done that in his life, does that make him a bad person? But then again, you also said he had some sort of relationship, or at least it sounds like via some of the articles that you've read, he has a relationship with the Weinsteins, or at least Harvey Weinstein. So is he a victim of having a relationship with someone who has a bad background now that this has come out? And so does that influence you in any way to not want to watch any of the movies that he has anymore?
So I definitely so his handling of the situation with Weinstein and Uma Thurman was not ideal, and I'm just gonna say it. I mean, I love the films. It would be really difficult for me to not watch them, but it does make me reevaluate them in a sense. I'll be more skeptical of Tarantino films now that I know the relationship. I mean, the issue for me is I don't, despite kind of exogenous influences of the Weinstein incident, it's kind of hard to argue that those events made the material itself worse. So the movies are still going to be great no matter what.
Well, so the thing with me
just kind of how you like perceive them.
And when it comes down to movies, I grew up watching these movies called Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard of that. And from what I recall, the director was, I can't believe he was, I can't remember if he was a sexual abuser or a sexual assaulter or alleged rapist, right? And this is a long time ago. This is like 20 years ago. But I found out that they made a Jeepers Creepers 3 recently, and then that came out. I was like, oh, you're gonna pay for this movie, or you're gonna watch this movie or buy this movie and then support this guy who did this thing. Well, there's a couple of things that you can weigh. You can say initially, like right out the gate when we come up with that information, well, I'm not going to support it because this one guy did something really bad, or allegedly did something really bad a long time ago. You can say that and then end it. But then you can say, well, he did this and then he paid his time. I think he may have went to court and settled, or he went to jail. I don't know the whole story, and I apologize for not looking into this before. That could have been the case too, where he went to jail for whatever he did wrong. So he served his time, and then you can, I guess, forgive someone for that at that point, or not. You also have the option of looking at it from this perspective of, well, there are hundreds of people who worked on this movie, with the exception of him, so they're all trying to make money as well. Even though this one guy's making money, you're not necessarily supporting him, but you're supporting the film and the people who are behind the film, who did the makeup and did the acting. So when you're not going to watch a movie because the director was a piece of shit, or even with Tarantino, Samuel L. Jackson's a great actor. He's in almost every single one of his movies, and then Quentin Tarantino knows how to get a great performance out of any actor. So you're going to miss out on a good movie no matter what, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, first we need to just kind of say that Jeepers Creepers is not in any way close to Pulp Fiction or...
No, I know, but it's still like one. It's
no,
not a guilty pleasure either.
Yeah. I get it. I used to watch this as well, but
it's scary when I was growing up, man.
Yeah. Oh God, I don't need to hear that.
Potty mouth.
Kind of something that you mentioned that these events happened even if they occurred many years ago, or
Mhm.
like they serve some kind of there's some kind of retribution for the actions. It's so hard to kind of disassociate the person from the negative action, because it's just, I guess one thing that I want to make sure isn't happening is saying, oh, well, this person, kind of like you've seen defenses of people, oh, well, why didn't victims come out at the time of the time
Right, when
things
it happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's way harder than that. And so at least, I mean,
Well, yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
you
wanna-
have, and this is something that people might not think about, is the legal costs that you might be drowned in as an individual person.
Right.
You know, so you're risking your career, and then you're risking whatever money you have to go to court and it to be drawn out. You exhaust
Yeah.
your funds, and
And
then
then
it
you
just goes
have-
away.
Yeah, and then you have some institutions that could go against you anyway, just because of
Yeah.
inherent bias in the system. And
Now,
so,
if we were to shift from directors, because that's what we're looking at right now, into individual actors, one of the biggest people who got hit, I guess, during the whole scandal process in the past 8 months, maybe. How long has it been? Almost a year? I
Yeah.
can't even remember. But Kevin Spacey, right? So Kevin Spacey was putting out great material. One of my favorite movies, A Beautiful Mind. I've seen parts of the House of Cards series, but from what
Yeah.
I've seen, I mean, it was really compelling, and it was really he sells the role as the Southern
yeah.
gentleman who betrays you, I guess. But what do you think about watching his material now that the allegations come out, and he's kind of just, you know, faded away? I don't think he's been in the spotlight in months. So are you less likely to go back and watch a movie that he's in, or does it not really matter? Because I can see it as he's playing a character. He's not himself. You should be able to separate between the movie and the person itself. But that's just me.
Right. Well, I guess that is tough because, I mean, one of my favorite movies that has come out recently is Baby Driver that Kevin Spacey is in. And it's
yeah, that's right.
brilliant movie, and he's in it. He plays an important role in the movie, and it has maybe, I haven't watched it since the allegations. I'm not saying that I won't go back and watch it again
Yeah.
because of them, but it has made me question whether or not I can appreciate it as much. And what can make me appreciate it is everyone, kind of the point you were making earlier, is that there's so many people who go into these movies or these art projects and they had no idea. Like I follow Edgar Wright on Twitter, and I believe he tweeted out like, I didn't know that this was going on, and that does make me feel somewhat better about it. It's still unsettling, I guess, but it's difficult for me to write off a movie that I loved because of one person did bad things. And I don't want to take this to the, oh, it happened so many years ago, because it shouldn't matter when it happened. And really, I think what made it worse is that his apology was bad.
It was
bad.
more about himself than it was about the incident.
Yeah, I said.
Or he came out as gay at that time.
Well,
right?
he's been out.
Oh, has he
so
been out?
Which
I thought
made
it was
it
saying.
even worse. I'm pretty sure he'd been out for a while.
Oh, well, I thought it was kind of like known in Hollywood, but I thought he pretty much
Just kind of didn't say anything about it.
right.
Yeah.
I thought whenever he posted that, it was like him It was not him celebrating, but it was him coming out as a gay man to the world.
Yeah, but he said, "Oh, I don't remember those moments. I'm really sorry about it. But hey, look at me. Like, I've got this thing going on in my life." It's like, that's not what we're talking about, man.
Yeah,
Like, that's,
that was, and I wonder if that was a PR stunt or if that was just him.
I think reacting in the worst way possible, maybe. I don't know, because it was really like, again, no issues if you're gay. I mean, just if you're gonna come out or make a statement about your sexuality or anything about you personally, don't have it being an apology for something that's like freaking, I don't know, OJ coming out as, yeah, like obviously it's very different, but like.
Wait, what? OJ didn't do anything.
It's definitely a tough call. I think, I mean, and we've discussed this before off mic, the idea that, you know, a lot of these people are facing allegations and are still technically innocent in the court system. However, in the court of public opinion, they are guilty as can be. And so for a lot of folks, you know, you're not going to be able to kind of live that down. It's going to tarnish your it's going to tarnish your legacy, I guess, what you're leaving behind. But there's definitely still room for some sort of appreciation. I mean, I just kind of recently got into more of Kevin Spacey's movies. This would have been, you know, months ago before all of the allegations came out against him. Finally saw, what is it, American Beauty? And then there's another one that he's in, not Wise Guys,
The Usual Suspects.
The Usual Suspects, yeah. So, you know, both great movies. And Baby Driver, as you mentioned, Matthew, I've actually been seeing a lot more recently on Twitter, more people coming out and saying how good the movie was. You know, no mention of Kevin Spacey or anything, but a lot of mention of, man, this was overlooked, should have been Oscar nominated in more categories than it was.
Well, how about this question?
And so there's clearly an appreciation for the work still.
Well, how about this question? Can you still appreciate his work in the movie and comment on how well his performance was in the movie, but then separate that from the man,
himself,
the individual?
That's tough because
now, now that we know what we know, we have some sort of bias going in.
I would say definitely that kind of depends on who you're talking to, who your audience is, because I mean, he put on a great performance in the movie, but if you say that to someone who's been affected by like some kind of like sexual assault or anything like that, then obviously they're going to react negatively, and it's justified that they would. And so it's just, I don't know, that's tough. That's really tough.
I think the comparison I make a lot of times is with athletes and, you know, professionals that you see performing out there on TV or on the field or on the court or in the ring, wherever that might be. And I think Floyd Mayweather is a good example. I hate him with a passion. I think he is a terrible person, a crap human being, but I respect him as a boxer, not as a person. Honestly, if that dude just like keeled over, you know, the world,
think he takes care of his kids pretty
the
well.
world might actually be a better place.
I think he seems to be
sure.
like a good father.
Except for the part where he beats his wife.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry. that's like the thing. That is the reason that like he is a crap person.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying he's a bad person because he's like, you know, full of himself and a jerk. I'm saying that because he is a legitimate bad person.
It makes him even worse that he's like a world-class boxer and he.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I can still separate and respect. He is the greatest boxer of our lifetime, like up there with Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. And
but that doesn't mean he deserves.
Yeah, it does. You don't have to respect him as a boxer. I'm just saying I do, but I do not respect him as a person.
Right. Yeah. No, it's actually kind of sticking to boxing with, and I guess UFC a little bit, but boxing. The other, who did Floyd Mayweather?
Conor McGregor?
No, I was gonna get to him, but
great guy, by the way, Manny Pacquiao.
Manny Pacquiao.
So there's actually he is actually a representative in
the Philippines.
Yes, he's like a head of their legislation or something like that. I don't know.
Legislative body. He's definitely but he is actually. So he comes across as this really nice guy and everything, but he has some really, really messed up views on homosexuality and is he is 100% anti-gay, anything LGBTQ, and he is called for some pretty, from what I remember, I can't remember exactly the specifics, but he is called for some pretty jacked up stuff and to be passed in the Philippines regarding homosexuals and just members of the LGBTQ.
Yep. Cool. I didn't realize that was something he was really serious about.
Yep.
I guess like from his area, they're very
I mean, yeah,
Are
you
they
have
Catholic or are they? I guess they're.
yeah, definitely some kind of
Yeah.
Christian denomination. And another boxer slash UFC fighter, Conor McGregor, he has also said he had some really incendiary comments that were pretty racist and stuff during his like the build up to the fight between he and Conor McGregor.
But yeah, but are you?
I mean, he and Floyd Mayweather. Sorry.
Yeah, but do you think that was more of like building the fight, and he was getting people to hate him?
Well,
Just how Floyd Mayweather was getting people to hate him on the other side, you know?
I think that's less strategy and more just being a dick.
There's
I
a
don't know.
line.
I
There's
really
a
don't know
line,
though,
yeah.
because I think they both toe the line of being an asshole enough that you're like, I want to see the other person knock him out, right? How many people wanted to watch that fight because they wanted to see Conor McGregor maybe luckily knock out Floyd Mayweather because they thought Mayweather ran his mouth so much?
Well, I wanted it to happen because Floyd's a crappy person.
Yeah.
I think.
But I
Well,
mean, Conor
I think
McGregor
it's
runs
just.
it out too,
I
yeah.
feel like. I mean, this
That's-
is a totally different conversation, but or actually, I guess it kind of fits in the same thing. I think that's less of. Again, I still don't think it's much strategy. I think it's more of what kind of power can, like the kind of people powerful positions can attract. Because I mean, you look at. I mean, the people who are in like at the helms of these movies or who are featured in movies or in music, even with a lot of big name rappers having some pretty and like indie rock bands having some pretty bad allegations thrown their way, along with government positions, sports. I mean, there are some really. It's just that powerful people, I feel, can believe that they can get away with stuff, and because of their status, because of the money they have. And so, I don't know. It's just people just feel like they can get away with stuff. And
Does that abuse of power sway your opinion in any way? Like we're kind of talking about the ability to separate the person from the product, and so the use and abuse of that power could paint them in a light where I don't respect them as a person, but I appreciate the work they've done. Could be a politician who, is involved in sexual harassment cases, but has actually done decent work as a politician in getting stuff done and getting reform, his area or her area, wherever they are responsible for moving in the right direction. And so what constitutes someone being a good person, even if they're abusing that power?
well, I would like to see some, if we can find them, just some examples of people who do kind of toe that line in the sense that they are saying or doing really bad stuff, but also saying and doing things that are good for their community or good for the country even. Because I feel like a lot of times, this could just be the nature of how stories spread in social media and just in media in general. But I feel like once you hear good things about a person, it's very unlikely that you hear any like negative stuff like that come out of them. It's different from like
and vice versa.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so it's different from them performing well in a sport, movie, music, whatever, because that is doing something well, not doing good, I guess. There's definitely, you have to kind of totally separate those and ideas. And so, yeah, I feel like, again, it just kind of, again, blurs the line of what you can and can't appreciate, or not. I don't want to say can or can't, but
right. But like
what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, they've passed a couple laws that went into effect, and say, for instance, they crack down on drunk driving, and death rates go down 12% in your county or whatever, from drunk drivers. You should appreciate that, but at the same time, it could have been a crappy politician who is a scumbag who enacted those laws.
Yeah.
So, you appreciate the results, but you don't appreciate the person who did it.
Right.
So it goes, I guess, with everything we're talking about. You can appreciate the end product. You can appreciate the movie, the hard work that went into it, that others put into it, and even that person put into it to give the maybe Oscar-winning performance of a lifetime, but they're still a crappy person at the end of the day.
Well, even going, like, kind of tying in the politics thing, so many people and so many ideas go into legislation that's passed. It's not just that one guy or one girl pushing their agenda. It's usually they have a certain agenda. It's fueled by special interest groups or stuff like that. And so
where it should be fueled by their
personal motivation.
Right, or their
local
local community.
The people they represent.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
people that they represent.
That's the point.
That is the point.
Yeah. And
that
you
is
don't,
so lost.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry.
So I want to bring it back to the actual art and entertainment. I know we kind of got lost on down the politics route a little bit.
Yeah, we've talked athletes, politics.
Yeah.
With athletes, if I have a football player there's been history of football players that are domestic abusers, and if you're putting up 20 points a week for my football team, am I allowed to be okay with that? Or am I like, yeah, this is great, or should I drop them for ethical purposes? Like, this person's clearly a terrible human being, but they're a good football player.
I say change sports. You should watch hockey because those guys are normally 99%
They just
of
beat
the
each
time,
other up.
Yeah, they're good people. So you don't have to worry about those things.
I mean, that's just a question with you about the football. Like, that's just, I mean, that's a one-off thing, but
it's applicable to every single season.
There's
a different guy
no
or
one's
two
dropping Adrian Peterson if he's putting up points, or for Ezekiel Elliott, as we've heard, was going through court. What was he in court for?
Hitting a woman. And then I think he was in like a regular bar fight too.
And then
with
pushed
not
off
a woman.
the suspension process, and then eventually got suspended. Yeah. Who was dropping him on the team? No one. If you could get him, you would get him. Like, that's just how it was. So when there's money on the line, people don't care.
Yeah, I feel like that's something where the institution of the NFL should be taking more responsibility to crack down on stuff like that. I don't know if at that point it is the responsibility of the consumer, aka you guys watching
right, but you're still
I guess
you're making the decision though by saying, like, well, I don't care what he does, like, even though it's fantasy football, it really is nothing, like, in the scheme of things, but you're trying to win a game, and so you're winning at any cost possible, and so at the cost of your own morality, you're picking this guy up who may not live by your standards, but at the same time, everyone else has players on their team. I don't know how Eli Manning lives outside of life. He could go home and snort cocaine all night long, and I have no idea. I'm totally against that. But if he does that, and I don't know, well, I could draft him. Find out Eli Manning doesn't make it to the game because he did cocaine before the game. Oh, great! I started him today. So does that make
Eli Manning is awesome.
That's not true.
But I think it would be interesting to find out. Because there are so many cases of domestic violence in football specifically, there is one guy in particular who was actually just added, like Joe Biden has this initiative, former Vice President Joe Biden has this initiative to look into domestic abuse, and he has like a not-for-profit organization that kind of heads up different strategies to approach it. And one of the guys he added is a current NFL football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His name's William Gay. And his mom was in an abusive relationship, ultimately ended up getting killed. And, he's been a strong advocate for domestic violence awareness. And so that's kind of like, he has to take the field and play against the Dallas Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott and, Greg Hardy when he was in the league with the Panthers and the Cowboys. So, how does it make those people feel who have experienced firsthand the impact of these abusers, and, they're taking the field and these guys, making millions of dollars to play a game, which we may talk about at some other point, how I hate everything that society has become revolving around the world of sports, that people play a game for a living and
Yeah,
make
but you're-
millions of dollars. I hate it, but
But-
that's for another day.
Okay. I was gonna bash you on that one. Maybe some of our fans would appreciate that.
Maybe
Me to crack down on you, Vic.
maybe some of the teachers that you had should have gotten paid more than $4,000 a year.
What is that supposed to mean?
That's my argument, Steven.
Against my education.
Reallocation of
Yeah,
funds.
reallocation of funds.
Reallocation of
Athletes do
money.
not deserve to get paid what they get paid.
Especially whenever others are people who are doing stuff for the community are doing more personal stuff for the community, like teachers are
That
making
actually
such
have
Oh yeah, I thought
impacts,
we were,
yeah.
I thought
Shit
you
money.
and I were talking about your. I was gonna say your love for sports, so I thought it was ironic that you brought up what you said. That's what I thought you were getting at.
I do like playing sport and watching
Just
hockey and soccer.
and football.
I guess soccer is the biggest
Don't-
offender,
come on,
right?
man.
No,
I'm-
soccer's
What I'm
wild.
saying is I'm
I
being
love
hypocritical because
Yes.
soccer is where the most money is exchanged. And
Okay, well,
anyway,
anyways, we're
but
I
digress.
literally bouncing off the walls today. So whoever's listening to this podcast,
Are we literally?
please stay. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Let's look into literature, right? So I brought this up to Vic earlier, and I thought it was going to be a good example. He seemed to shoot it down and say it was not a good example, but I want to use Sun Tzu, who wrote the book The Art of War, or at least he wrote something down and then someone published it as him, right? So one of the great, I guess, military strategists, however you say
Strategy.
this, from, and I couldn't tell you the age where he was from, but he was like in a Chinese dynasty, and he
Long
helped,
time ago.
yeah, a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, and he helped lead an army to kill thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe,
Mm.
of other people, for the benefit of his
Hmm.
his dynasty or his country. So does that make him a bad person?
Well, I feel like you have to kind of take military action kind of with a grain of salt, especially back so long ago, because it was a totally different standard of living. Like if we're that is to me very different from looking at kind of modern art. And again, back to our previous examples of movies, even sports, because that is people. Yeah, they're doing something they love, aka producing this art, but then also engaging in really just bad behavior outside of the realm of their, or like
So you're saying
abusing their
there's
place of power.
There's no established morality back when this was going on.
I mean,
so
there
it's
is
not a big
established
deal.
morality, but killing people for the name of your country was considered immoral for a lot of. If you look
Well,
at
for us,
if-
it's not.
It's
well,
been
for us,
happening
it's-
through.
Well,
All right,
or is it?
take Dwight Eisenhower. He's an author. He's written books. One of our past presidents, I believe, like the 34th president or something. He was a general in the U.S. Army.
Yep.
Like, he's responsible for coming up with strategies to go kill Nazis, I believe. And so, like, depending on what side you're on, he was either moral or immoral or bad or good. And
Yeah.
so,
It's just I'm not bashing your point. I'm just saying it's kind of, for me, it's difficult to associate the two of.
Well, all right. So how about this? I appreciate the boats that the Vikings created. I appreciated the way that they sculpted
Longboats.
it, longboats, the wood that they used, the sculptures they created inside the boats. But Vikings pillaged and raped families and just normal people all the time, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
So am I allowed to appreciate the art that they had, but also identify that these are savages?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think
I think so too, but I'm just saying
that's definitely a more prevalent connection. But so I hate making this argument because it can only extend so far. But that very different standards of living. Not to say that it was right for them to do that, because it wasn't, obviously. But if you look at the time, I mean, people, again, I guess it's more of a question of abuse of power again, because that's all that really
they had
was.
the ability to
They had
do
the
so.
ability, they had the power do
take advantage.
terrible things,
Yeah.
take advantage of people. And so now it's kind of translated like something as obscene as the actions taken by Vikings and other like other societies, quote unquote, and like 1500. I mean, basically for thousands of years, it's kind of translated into these people of power who now, instead of just killing and whoever they can for the name of getting more territory, it's taking advantage of women or taking advantage of a situation they have to kind of get rid of, maybe do away with what's it called, their enemies or their competitors. And they can do that because they have the money to pay people off. They have just the means to do so. And so it's kind of looking back again how power can totally change how you interact with people, and in a very negative way. I feel like, I mean, the notion that power corrupts individuals is, I definitely see that as true.
And absolute power corrupts.
Well, we saw-
Absolutely.
We saw
Lord
Tiger
Tom.
Woods, who seemed to be like the greatest human being of all time.
But behind the scenes,
He was out there in Pound Town.
definitely Pound Town. But I guess to go back to like the Vikings and to make a couple quick points, I mean, to go back with Steve, you know, I definitely am on board with the appreciation of the longboats that they created. The whole idea, you know, medieval times for me is kind of cool. And then even ancient Japan and things like that. You know, you have your knights, you have your samurai, you have your Vikings. You know, I think all of that stuff is super cool. The weaponry, the shields, the armor that they wore. In the process now of possibly designing new tattoos to get, and the idea of like, it was so cool, the weaponry and the armor back then. And they were all fighting for different reasons, but they were all killing people. And that's the thing, like, I can appreciate certain things that went into the crafting of, you know, the blacksmithing of all of the equipment and how cool some of the designs were. But when you look on the deeper level, like, they were fighting not necessarily for great reasons. And so you can still respect things that came out of it, like those times, but looking back, you know, it might not have been the best execution. And so I think another aspect back to the Vikings, you know, the reason they abused their power so much, it wasn't even, you know, it's all part of their strategy going forward. It's a psychological warfare as much as it is physical. Right. And so if they're going in and raping and pillaging these villages as they conquer them, it's like the next village over is like, we might as well just like give up and get out of town. You know, it made things potentially easier for them. So that is, you know, the reason why they were doing the things they were doing, and it was bad and wrong.
So that was their strategy.
Yeah, and it happens in other cultures too.
What bothered me a little bit when you said that it was different for Sun Tzu and his country to kill thousands and thousands of people, but then it's bad for Vikings to kill and then rape and do all what they did.
Well, I'm not saying that it wasn't bad of Sun Tzu to. I mean, I know nothing about who this guy is.
Yeah,
I appreciate him as a strategist.
Right, and he was the greatest military strategist of all time.
He killed people. But
well, just even with the Vikings connection, like for me, it's very difficult to kind of associate or kind of connect kind of immoral behavior in art and entertainment today with what was at the time considered moral and behavior back thousands of years ago, but now that we attribute that, or we say that is totally immoral. So right now the difference is people are aware of what's going on, and they believe, the general public believes, that these actions that people in power, or some people in power, are doing are immoral. But at the time,
does it matter at the time though? Because we're looking at it from our eyes, not their eyes. So that's just like whenever we're looking at, or when people were looking at the Confederate statues, right? And they brought them down earlier last year.
Well, the thing with the
That's their eyes and not our eyes, right?
But the thing with the Confederate statues is that there were most of them. I want to say like upwards of like 90% of Confederate statues were actually erected after, like years and years and years after the Civil War in response to
Civil rights movements.
Well, most
Okay.
of them came up during the Jim Crow
Okay.
South. So like that again that was
Yeah.
a clear retaliation against civil rights.
Okay, well,
being
that- I
prevalent,
mean, that
yeah.
does-
And I
So,
mean,
yeah.
you look at, regardless of whether or not Sun Tzu was moral or immoral in his military strategy, dude's just trying to survive, man. He's just trying to live longer than the other group of people that's trying to kill him.
Yeah. And
So-
then,
Well, all right. Well,
again,
then let's go to a worse example, right? And I know you had it down, and you have read the book.
Buzz Aldrin.
Nope. Did he kill people on the moon?
Moon people.
That's why there are no aliens, guys. Buzz Aldrin done messed them up. No, you read Hitler's book.
Mein Kampf.
I have not read that book. I don't know what it's about, but
my
can you still get an appreciation for what the book represents?
I'm just gonna say my hot take, less of a hot take really, is that some people are just so bad that it's not okay to like.
Well, all right.
I mean, like
I want
can't
to
have- you
challenge
can't
that.
have-
No, I want to challenge that. What you're saying, because what's your favorite band?
favorite band, Frank Ocean and Car Seat Headrest are like.
So,
tied.
so if somehow Hitler was alive and his favorite musician was Frank Ocean, would you be like, I have to reconsider that?
There's no way Hitler's favorite artist is a gay black guy. Come on.
What if he didn't know he was gay?
It doesn't matter. Okay, but
what
now
I'm saying-
you're taking it to a place of
No,
that's
well-
like me and Harvey Weinstein having the same favorite movies, because that just because he might like the same stuff I like doesn't mean that I can't like it. No, we're talking about
But you're saying
the
ideas,
art produced,
ideologies, right?
ideology produced by the person produced by this person.
But he could have been
in power.
influenced by something else, you know?
Yeah, but influence.
you guys
I'm
could-
influenced by certain things that could make me act totally different. I mean, I don't do like.
Well, two people can read the Bible and get two different interpretations.
Yeah, you're right, but that's why I don't read it.
Well, that's. I mean, I'm just saying
I
that's how.
get it, I
that's how
get it, yeah.
religion is, right? That's
Yeah.
how Islam has
Yeah.
their different sects, and that's how Christianity does too. But what I'm saying is that you can have two of the same basis for information, and then two different conclusions from that basis.
Right.
So
So I
you and I could read the same thing, and then
But-
deviate in
Yeah,
different
so I
paths.
guess-
I think the comparison isn't right on your end necessarily, because you're taking this third party look at it, that Hitler appreciated oranges and I like eating oranges. It's totally different than Hitler believed in killing Jews. I certainly don't
No,
believe
no.
that.
I'm not saying I don't want to even have that connection there, that I would even advocate for that sort of thing. I'm just
No,
saying.
Oh yeah,
that
we're
there-
not. We're not.
You're
saying
not,
it.
we're
Right.
not
Well, I
saying
don't know
that.
what's inside the book though.
Right.
So that's
And-
what's hurting my argument. But
not necessarily. It's not even like, and there's certain, like you said, people can read something and get different interpretations out of those. And so even going into reading Mein Kampf, and it's the same with the Unabomber. We've talked about this on the previous episode. I have read his
manifesto.
manifesto, and it's more of a desire to understand, like, what the hell happened to this crazy individual
Right.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
caused him to lead the life that he led.
Yeah.
And so, in reading these things, it's not that I agree with anything involved in them, and it's not that I appreciate them in any way. It's more of a glimpse into their psyche.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of, we shouldn't look at it about how, I mean, if you are influenced by Mein Kampf or the Unabomber Manifesto in a way
Seek
that
help.
makes you, yeah, exactly. If it's in a
Dangerous.
way that makes you dangerous, or makes you want to spread these horrible, horrible ideas, then that is more of a problem with you. If you're one who interprets Christianity or Islam in particular, because there are a lot of people who say, oh well, or there's a lot of kind of propaganda saying that Islam is a bad religion. No, it's how people interpret it, and it's not the source material that needs to be looked at, it's the individual. And so I guess it's going back to, that's why I have my kind of opinion on the whole, like, some people are so bad that they don't deserve a second look, is that it's, if the individual is going to do these horrible things, then
like
that's it.
Regardless how good Hitler's art may have been when he was younger,
it's void.
Yeah.
If you're gonna commit mass genocide in the way that he and the Nazis did, then
cannot respect him as an artist.
Why do you think that people? This is like, did Stalin ever do anything? Did he ever publish any art or any books or anything? Okay, because I was going to kind of compare the two and say that while Hitler deserves the bad rap that he got,
sure,
Stalin doesn't quite get the.
He's not quite there.
Right, but then on the record, he has led to the murders and killings of more people than Hitler has. But I just feel like, no, I mean, I feel like it's easy because, like, it's
super easy to point out Hitler, though, just because of
obviously,
the scale and
that's like whenever you punch your grandma in the face, it's like everyone's
like
gonna tell you. No, what I'm saying is everyone's gonna tell you, why the hell did you do that? Because clearly that you should be doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, what could a grandma do that you'd literally punch a grandma in the face?
That was actually a thing. You remember a couple years ago? It was like the knockout game that was going around where you just randomly punch different people.
Randomly go up to someone and punch them in the face.
Some kids tried to like knock out a grandma, and she like just took the punch like a champ, and the kids ended up getting arrested. Some like bystander tackled the kids to the ground, and they got arrested. It was great.
Sorry to compare the two like that, but what I'm saying is it's an obvious wrong.
Yeah, so that's actually, that point, that's kind of going off, again, the distinction of individual versus individual's influence, because obviously these kids were influenced to do, like, they saw these videos and stuff and thought, oh, this would be funny if I tried this. But that's a problem. Like, I had seen, like, or at least heard of those videos, and I was never like, oh, yeah, I want to go punch someone's lights out just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Like, so it makes, I guess it's really hard to kind of take all the, kind of wrap it back into our original kind of discussion on the appreciation of stuff, because I guess you can appreciate art, but you can't appreciate the individual and who produces such art, whatever. I don't know.
But then even you were saying that if the person's so bad that it doesn't even matter what they
shouldn't.
produce.
Yeah, some people just don't.
Can we name one other individual besides Hitler that if you saw their body of work, you'd be like, no?
Steve Dinkins Jr.
Great.
On par with Hitler.
I would have to say.
It's definitely, you're right though. It's a case by case basis.
It's okay, yeah.
Well, I know, but
can you?
Yeah, exactly. That's because it's so easy of an example. I mean, it is very fair why he's been painted the way that he is, because he
painted like an artist.
Yeah.
Maybe. I would like to. I'm assuming Bill Cosby is guilty, just because. All the stuff about him.
Alleged.
I know, it's all alleged, and it's really, you can't.
How about this? With the amount of evidence or the amount of accusations against him, it is very highly unlikely that he's not.
Yeah, guilty of something. Yeah. And so I actually saw an interesting take on like the whole the alleged argument is that. I can't remember exactly what the argument was saying. It was basically saying that, yeah, innocent until proven guilty is important because of all of the kind of challenges that women face to come out about these instances and how often they are dismissed as, oh, boys will be boys, stuff like that. It's kind of, in this case, you're in a lot of cases, especially with these powerful people like Bill Cosby or like Kevin Spacey. I mean, I know Kevin Spacey was a little bit different because it was with a gay man, but
Gay boy.
Yeah, young,
A little worse.
Gay boy?
A lot worse, yeah. And
Oh,
so
I should say a boy who. Yeah.
Who is now a man
Yeah.
and not a woman.
young person at the time. But yeah, so anyway, it's kind of, at this point, you have to look at certain cases. Again, it is a case by case analysis, but some people are just, you kind of have to assume
So you don't think
guilty at first.
You don't think there's any redemption for Bill Cosby?
I mean, if he really did drug tons of women and take advantage of it, then absolutely not. I don't think there's any redemption.
There's a guy that we know who is either in jest or in seriousness, I honestly couldn't tell you, has said, "Oh, don't throw him away. I mean, he's old. He doesn't even know what's going on anymore." And it's like it doesn't take
matter.
away from the fact that what he did
it, and he did know what was going on at the time.
Allegedly.
Okay, all right,
I don't want to get sued by anybody because we're saying that we're spitting out false truths.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think of OJ for one. You know, we were a little too young to have grown up with the whole case, but we've seen enough and read enough about it. You know, he's the definition of innocent in the court, but guilty in the court of public opinion.
well, that's
And
probably
so-
because he also lost the
civil case.
civil case.
Yeah. So
I mean, that didn't help at least.
yeah, definitely didn't help that he had to do all the payout stuff, but he's one for me that, like, you know, you could be the greatest running back in the world and, you know, just can't. I don't acknowledge him as a football player, and it might be because of our age. We didn't grow up seeing him play football, but, you know,
I remember him as a movie star.
I remember him as a criminal, alleged criminal. Well, a guilty in a civil court criminal, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and then he's gone on to do nothing but prove my opinion right? With all of his other
actions, yeah.
I mean, it seems like his life kind of just spiraled out of control after that.
So going kind of off of that, it's going back to our first example of, or second, third example, I can't exactly remember, but Harvey Weinstein, it's really difficult for me to decide how much I can appreciate stuff produced or made by the Weinstein Company, because again, we already discussed, it's so many people go into the production of those films, and he really just throws money into them. That's all his real function is. So, because he is irredeemable, in my opinion. That's just because, like, the stuff that he did was just
super scummy. Yeah,
just a total scumbag. And so, but again, like, I guess it also, if we're looking at the Weinstein case, then his function was to give money to make for movies to be made. That's right. He didn't.
He invested in the production.
He
of
invested in it. He didn't, like, at least not to my knowledge, he didn't have, like, hands-on.
Yeah, and employed so many individuals. It's hard to say. It's hard to really say that you can't. I don't think you can completely write off the appreciation of any of the movies. I mean, I'm sure have been a bunch of crappy movies that he produced.
Right.
I couldn't name any of the big movies that he's produced, and they were, you know, amazing and critical fame and everything like that. But I don't think you would write those off just because someone would put the money up for it. I mean, that's because someone's an investor of something. That's different. If it's someone abusing their power in direct relation to whatever the art or entertainment is, I think that's when you start getting a little bit fuzzy.
So I think transitioning, not necessarily to a lighter subject, but I guess this, rather than being the person behind the subject matter being immoral or bad, this is taking a famous author and looking at the presentation of the subject matter as immoral or taboo. And so a while ago, probably almost 2 years ago now, I saw a list of the top 10 most controversial or like banned books in the world. And so obviously I watched the video, learned about the books, and a couple of them I had read, a couple of them were your typical like
Catcher in the Rye, was that in there?
Catcher in the Rye was in there, which by the way, I would recommend reading it. I don't know why it was like banned or controversial.
Because someone killed someone in the
Ending
name of it?
was horrible. Oh, maybe someone.
Wasn't that Charles Manson?
I don't know, but the ending of the book really made me angry. Anyway, on the list were a number of books, and one of those I went ahead and ordered like all of them. Some of them I had read already, but one of the books was Lolita, which is by Vladimir Nabokov. And so the idea behind the story focuses on like pedophilia and also, you know, a taboo relationship between a stepfather and his stepdaughter. And so, you know, the subject matter, very taboo. I mean, the reason I read it was because I wanted to find out why it was so controversial. You know, it was on this list along with, you know, Huck Finn and Catcher in the Rye and Slaughterhouse-Five, you know, all these classic literature books. And so I read it, and honestly, you know, I felt a little weird reading it. I was reading it on flights back and forth to D.C., and so having to pull that book out in airports and on airplanes was a little weird.
I wonder how many people actually know what the book is.
Yeah. But it's like the subject matter is taboo. Can I respect it as a book, even though, you know, this idea of not technically incestuous, but a like pedophilic, a very inappropriate relationship took place. And so as a read, I thought it was, one, entertaining, and two, you know, well written. But you know, I mean, I guess that's where I stand on it. I thought it's definitely worth a read, regardless of the fact that the subject matter is controversial.
Well, I think it's less of whether or not, because I mean, you can have, I guess it's less of whether or not the subject matter itself is controversial. It's how the subject matter as portrayed, and so like, or the character is portrayed. So like, if say there's a book about kind of this inappropriate relationship, if it's portrayed in a good light, then that's where it becomes, I think, a real issue. So yeah, I think it's, again, less of the subject matter itself, but really like, because you can tell like whether or not the author views something in a good light or a negative light.
Steven's currently pulled up a list of controversial books, and he is looking through them.
Well, one of them, which I surprisingly guessed was one of your censored books, the Lolita Express. It was just Lolita.
It's just Lolita.
Lolita Express was actually an event or something that I think the FBI dubbed this actual plane where celebrities or higher up people would go to this guy's island and perform sexual acts with underage children. So and they got the name, the Lolita Express, which was the airplane from the book Lolita, which you read.
I did. And I have to say, looking at this list, there are only 2 books from this list that you pulled up that are on the same list that I went through. So Lolita is one of them, and To Kill a Mockingbird is the other.
But so with Lolita, what was the subject of that?
It was
an older man falling in love with a younger woman, right?
Yeah. So he basically specifically sought out this woman to have a relationship with the woman in order to get to the daughter. And so the woman, really spoiler alert, the woman had an untimely death, and so the now stepfather became the primary caretaker and, you know, exploited that fact. And there were points in the book where, you know, I'm not saying...
Is this book about Woody Allen?
Yeah, maybe. I have to be careful with the way that I phrase it, but, you know, the young girl, at least the way it was portrayed in the book, kind of had an understanding of, it's almost as if she egged him on, and like she knew that he had these inappropriate thoughts and feelings for her, and she, didn't lead him on, but kind of invited him in for it.
So with that,
ultimately she found the error of her ways, and
Well, with that subject matter, do we think? I mean, do you guys think it's inappropriate, or is it one of those things that you shouldn't even touch it? Like it is taboo.
I was very nervous to read it, especially in public, but I did it anyway, and I feel like it was worth it to me because it was a good book to read.
But it was still, I mean, nonetheless, it was still creepy. But
yes,
I guess you could compare it to even watching or listening to the serial podcast. You're listening to actions performed by a serial killer, and being narrated.
That's not. Serial is just that it's a serialized podcast.
Oh, well,
like, he allegedly killed one person.
Sword and the not Sword
and the Stone. Merlin, he was a killer. What?
It's like
yeah, I mean, Atlanta Monster, Up and Vanished, all these great true crime podcasts. You're dealing with murderers.
Sword in the Scale. That's what I was thinking of. That's the one I was telling you about. Where one of the podcasts I listened to, he brings up Sword in the Scale, and in the Sword in the Scale episode, it was talking about this guy who would go on AOL like chat rooms and talk to people about how he would murder kids, and then he would talk about chopping them up and eating them. And they read the dialogue in like a computerized voice, and it's so creepy.
That is awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I guess that goes back to so again, my previous point of it's how the actions are kind of relayed and whether or not it's in a positive light or a negative light. It sounds like in Lolita that there was, again, I don't know anything about the book. This is the first time I've ever actually heard of it. Sounds like, or you said that she like learned that this was inappropriate, and so kind of backed away from the entire experience.
So it's like a lesson to
exactly. Less of a lesson and more just like,
it definitely goes to the point, the way that it was painted, at least the way that I read it, it was never dark and negative. It was always presented as just kind of like another thing. Right. And so it wasn't, when you read it, yes, you knew and understood that the relationship was wrong, but you never got the feeling that he like abused his power or overstepped his bounds in any way. He did, because that's, it's just a wrong thing. But it was never like he just straight up raped her or anything like that. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of the author's, it would be interesting to know the author's actual intention behind the book, because that would totally change whether or not it'd be appropriate for it to even be on shelves anymore, I guess. So at least for me. So.
Well, that was a long discussion.
Yeah.
I think it was good and relevant. We definitely welcome comments on the discuss page for our episode discussions. This is pretty wild. We're getting deep into it, man. That's going to be coming at you normally on Wednesdays. But additionally, we have podcasts on Sundays, too.
That is the Raleigh Rambler.
Definitely.
You can find it on our website.
Sure can. If you guys out there are either visiting or already in the Raleigh area, definitely go ahead and check out the Raleigh Rambler. That's going to be available on, everywhere, iTunes, SoundCloud, everywhere our normal podcasts are available. And definitely check out the website, myshotoflife.com, where you can find a link to all of the information that is contained in there. And that's going to give you an idea of what's going on in the week to come in the Raleigh area.
All right, Matthew, do your best fart noise, because it is time for toilet talk.
I'm just not going to do that.
That's a good idea.
On this week's edition of Toilet Talk.
Previously on Toilet Talk. So this week we're talking about using the sink in the bathroom, washing your
Classic.
hands.
You learned this stuff in preschool.
Not peeing in the sink.
You learned this stuff before preschool.
One of the things I was always growing up to do immediately after you finish, no matter what you're doing. But what do you guys think? Using the bathroom, number 1, number 2. Do you always wash your hands?
I mean, yeah.
Do you always wash your hands?
I mean, like, on occasion, of course I don't. But, like,
Yay, honesty.
You should wash your hands every time. And so I would say most close to all times that I use the bathroom, I will wash my hands afterward.
But every time that you poop.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's disgusting.
There you go.
Yeah, right? All right.
So that's the typical routine.
I feel like that's not even a bias. That's just like a guy.
I will say there was a phase in college, and this was not by my own doing, that the bathrooms in the dormitories were not stocked with hand soap.
Oh,
Rather, they were stocked with hand sanitizer. And the thought process behind that is that the use of antimicrobial hand soap actually, over time, your hands...
the bacteria kind of learn how to live with that.
Correct, yeah. So the bacteria ultimately, you keep using the same...
0.01%.
Right, for the hand
sanitizer. Be a
sanitizer.
Super extra.
And so shout out to my undergrad university, Duquesne.
For doing the research.
For doing the research, they said that hand sanitizer was better. So there was... a time where I was not washing my hands after bathroom use, but I was using hand sanitizer.
That's
well, I'm all on board for hand sanitizer inside the urinals.
I've never agreed with anything more.
Not the urinals.
Inside
the urinals.
The stalls.
The stalls.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I like that, yeah.
You're pooping, and you finish.
And you got your fecal
fingers.
fingers.
You have to touch fecal fingers. Episode 1, man. That's a shout out right there. There you go.
Hashtag fecal fingers.
You have to touch the door handle. You're not touching it with
touch
your foot.
Your button, your zipper, your belt.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're putting all that dirty mess back on. You're taking it back with you to your desk.
Regardless of how clean you wiped,
Yeah,
it's still there.
It's so gross. Let's see. Okay, so that kind of goes back into, so if we're talking about stalls, we're talking about public restrooms. I'm sure you've seen this, where people in public restrooms have the audacity to take a piss, get out of a stall, and just walk right out.
I am so glad you brought this up.
Significantly,
God, it grosses me
I do
out.
have to say, I am less upset when guys, specifically, I've never been in a women's bathroom before.
Thank you for clarifying.
Guys will pee and not wash their hands and leave. I'm upset about it, but I'm not like enraged. But when people are using the other end and they're taking a poop and they leave the stall and immediately leave the restroom,
that's horrific.
Straight up disrespect.
I mean, you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
For not even realizing, not even thinking, not even considering the
and
fact
so
that
one
your
of the
hands
things
are
It has to
dirty.
be deliberate.
It's not a pass. It's not an excuse.
I'm just gonna walk.
Yeah, it's not an excuse. Everybody poops. You got to walk into the bathroom. You got to own it. If you're pooping and you come out of the stall and there are like 6 people in the bathroom, stare them down. Like, what are they going to do? Judge you for taking a poop?
Do you think that people get nervous?
People get nervous. They hear someone else come in to use the urinal or whatever, and they immediately, they're done in the stall and they open it up and they run out because they don't want you to see them to know that they just took a poop.
So what do you?
Oh,
how
but
do you feel?
no one is that fast for me to not get a quick glimpse and be like, oh, that's
I purposely look behind myself.
There's a guy who we call Stinky Pete in the office. We share an office.
He works
space.
at some law firm.
Yeah, so if you're out there listening, dude,
if you're in Raleigh and you hire a
hands.
law firm, don't do it from whatever law firm this guy works at.
Now, what do you guys think if he walks inside his office and then immediately it's like, oh gosh, I gotta put some hand sanitizer on me?
It's too late.
You've left.
Because he has disrespected
wash your hands,
you.
Wash your hands, then use hand sanitizer.
You have to open the door to get out. That's like, he's disrespected you. He knows you're in there. He knows you have to leave the bathroom.
You know what I have to do when we leave?
I use my pinky. Absolutely.
At the top of the door, or like my index finger, I pull it with one finger so I know that finger's dirty and the other ones are fine, and I'll do whatever with it.
And when I get back to my desk, I have a giant bottle of hand sanitizer on my desk. So not only do I wash my hands, but because I have to touch 2 different door handles on my way back to my desk, I pump out a little hand sanitizer and use that when I get back.
So I think we can all agree, if you're doing number 2, go wash your hands as well.
Wash your hands.
I think even if you're doing number 1 as well, you definitely should wash your hands.
In public.
It's slightly more forgivable. All right, most.
Because all right, like,
I get it.
if
I
we're at
get
home,
it. I get it. Yeah, if I'm at home, I am slightly less likely. I'm still likely to wash my hands, but like.
Well, you know how you can wear gym shorts and you can kind of just like
Kinda like
flip
flip
it
it
out.
out.
For guys,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
for
get it.
guys
You don't
at
have to touch
least.
anything.
We don't need to go into detail, but yeah, there is a specific method.
There is
So
an
then you don't have to
opportunity
flush,
where
but
you
then-
right. If you're touching the handle to flush, you should do something, whether
If
it's
I-
wash your hands or hand sanitizer.
If I
But
ask Aaron's like, "Oh my God, well you just touched the toilet handle. You have to wash your hands." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you're right."
Yeah, no, I have to be convinced sometimes.
yeah. Like I just didn't have to touch anything except for the handle.
dirty.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we could come up with that.
Yeah,
Consensus.
and
Yeah,
by the
after,
way,
after such a conversation like the first
So
one, it's nice to,
controversial.
it's nice
there
to
is
have a
also
single-
I would look up. There's new guidelines. I'm not sure if it's the CDC or who, but
Pooping?
for hand washing specifically, they've kind of changed it around over the years. It's not just
It should be a crime.
lather for 20 seconds, rub around. There's actually a specific method you're supposed to use, and I've adopted it recently.
Bleach.
That's like, it's this weird, like, interlocking of your fingers.
Nope,
like,
I'm
over
not
the
doing
top.
that.
It looks strange,
Yep,
but,
I'm not doing that.
I'm in there. I'm using the soap. I'm being good. Respecting my fellow potty goers.
Well, how about this? I want to add another layer to this. Since we got, we're already deep into this conversation. Washing your hands in the bathroom, hot or cold water?
hot water.
I prefer hot water, but unfortunately, most public restrooms.
Yeah, it will not get
No.
hot.
Yeah.
No.
So does that kill the germs?
I mean, you have
If
the
you don't
soap, and so I'm sure. I mean, I'm not a science guy, but I'm sure it does. Like, if it doesn't kill the germs entirely, you're not going to kill the germs entirely, no matter what.
Well,
But
maybe it's
it
just
does
easier to
help.
spread whenever it's hot, and maybe that's what it is.
I don't think so. I think hot water is specific. I mean, also because really, it's what like boiling water is what's supposed to actually effectively kill bacteria. But
Man, why don't we just jump in boiling water every day?
I don't know, Steve.
I just want to, show my inner layer of skin
Yeah.
or no skin, I guess.
Gross. That would eliminate the germs, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
All right, guys.
That's our toilet talk topic of the week. Brought to you this week by bleach. Use
Yeah,
it.
man.
Don't drink it.
Or
was gonna-
drink it to wash down your Tide Pods.
I was
Don't
going
do
to say
that.
something. Like, I was going to add something with buttholes, but I couldn't think of anything
Thank God
clever.
you didn't.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So from buttholes to bourbon, that's our next segment, the bourbon review. We're taking a look at what we've been drinking tonight, which is McAfee's Benchmark Old No. 8 Brand Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
I'm knocking down at least half a star for the name.
Yeah,
Right
it is
out
a
of-
mouthful. So for short, just like a little quick one on the label, it just says Benchmark real big. So if you just want to call it Benchmark, which is what I'm gonna do,
It's less
you know.
pretentious.
yeah, less
Yeah,
ridiculous.
no, Benchmark actually, and Benchmark is a pretty solid name. It may say well, as soon as you said Benchmark tonight, I was not expecting a $9 bottle of whiskey, so I
Yeah.
will say that.
So I think the fun fact here is that this whiskey is produced and distilled by Buffalo Trace.
Who was which was
Which-
featured on our last episode.
Yeah, which you're getting into a little higher end, more delicious, and they make a ton of different bourbons out of Kentucky there, and so to find one that's only $10 on average, I would say it might have been a little less, might have been $9 or something like that, but it came highly recommended from the guy at the liquor store, and so this is decent, I guess, to drink.
No, it's really. I mean, I just recently went through entirely too quickly a bottle of Maker's Mark, and that was really good. But I mean, this is not much worse, and I really enjoy Maker's Mark. But this is for $9. This
And I
might be my
mean,
new go-to,
if you want to have a
considering I'm still in
bourbon
college.
whiskey, if you want to have a bourbon whiskey, if you're in college, that's cheap,
Oh,
or
dude,
if you want to stock your
for
bar
it.
with
Yeah.
something to make
Yeah.
mixed drinks with.
You want to impress
I
someone?
mean, the fact that you
Way
can
better than Evan
on a
Williams.
budget?
So
the fact that you can drink this straight and also, leverage it as a mixing bourbon is just super beneficial for the price.
For me, it didn't taste like bourbon.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when you drink it, it was so smooth.
It didn't have
It
that.
didn't-
It didn't
it
have
didn't
that
have the-
bourbon. It wasn't as smoky as
Right.
yeah.
So if you're looking for a smoky, or if you're looking for like something to kind of hit you when you put it in your mouth,
spend more than $9.
spend more than that. Yeah, definitely. But if you're someone who can't really force down or has to force down bourbon or whiskey, but you still kind of enjoy the flavor,
It's a pretty good
Man, get it.
option.
I
yeah.
mean,
It could be a
Yeah.
good introductory bourbon.
It definitely
too.
is.
It doesn't hit
it's
you like
easy. I mean, it goes
but I
down
need more.
very in all honesty, this is the cleanest tasting bourbon that I've ever had, or I just say whiskey because we've only had a couple bourbons. But man, it's so weird how you can drink it and it doesn't taste like whiskey at all. Well, it has the
It has a flavor, but I do get what you mean. It's not as. I mean, we also
you know how like you get like a little bit of a pinch whenever you
Yeah.
swallow. You're like
a
kinda
little
hit you a
burning in the
a little
throat,
bit.
yeah.
No, you don't feel anything like that.
No, yeah.
So
what's the quick question? What's the
Alcohol?
rating system? Oh, I would like to know the ABV.
that.
yeah,
ABV,
I
it's
think it's
classic
40.
40%.
40.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, we've been kind of going on and off about the rating. We went from a number-based system that was 0 to 5. We went
I
to a
remember
list.
that.
We went to a
Yeah.
list system that's been at right now. I would say Blanton's old barrel,
Single barrel.
single barrel.
Original.
That's
yeah.
our first, and then probably our second's Buffalo Trace from last week.
Yeah, Buffalo Trace was very good.
Um,
I mean, I would rank this, at least for now. Well, it's top 8,
Yeah, doing well.
considering we've had
Doing
8
well.
episodes. Yeah, and it might. What I'm getting at least,
it's better than
is-
Bird Dog.
Yeah, definitely better than Bird
Just your
Dog.
description.
Bird Dog is a
In,
shout out.
in
every
my
episode for being
opinion,
Yeah.
better
bad.
than Wild Turkey as well. I know, Steve, you liked Wild Turkey.
And I
Yeah.
brought it for you guys.
Yeah, Matt, that was actually a gift from you.
It's fine. I'm broke. That's all I can afford.
But yeah, for now, I like I said, top 6 for me right now. But it has some staying power, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
It's probably top 5 for me. Blanton's Gold Edition, despite the fact that it's the most expensive one that we've had so far on the show, I just did not like it. So, I mean, it was, yeah, I think Benchmark cracks the top 5, and it's in the same conversation as
Interesting.
our Blantons and Buffalo Traces,
Yeah.
which is wild to think, but it's just, bang for your buck.
Yeah.
That's got to go into the thought process.
So Matt, we'll let you come up with your own rating system. Do you think it's out of
Well,
0 to 5? How would you rate it, and
Well, yeah,
would
I'll
you
do
recommend
this.
it?
What I'll do is 2 ways to rate it. So I'll do my own little hierarchy of whiskeys because I've only tried so many. But as well as so rating, I'd have to give it. So if I'm going out of 5, maybe a 3.5, maybe. Which and that is the only reason I'm giving it. I wouldn't give it higher, is just because if it's anywhere close to 5, it's got to be damn near perfect. And so
Yeah, and that'd be
that's it.
tough to judge.
Yeah,
It
no,
would
and
be.
so I did really enjoy it. Honestly, so my favorite whiskey or bourbon that I've ever tried is Woodford Reserve. Love that. My dad actually drinks it a lot, and anytime I'm home, he usually lets me drink my fair share. And so, but
I thought you were gonna say you're the reason why he drinks whenever you're at home.
probably. No, he drank way before. No, but so yeah, I would have to say this is. I think it's tied for me with. So Maker's Mark has always been my second favorite, but I think it's tied with Maker's Mark specifically because of the price, for being so cheap and still being very drinkable. Really, just like enjoyable to drink. So.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. If you feel like being frugal, and you feel like drinking a little bit on a Saturday night or any other night for that matter, we recommend picking up a little bottle of the Benchmark Old No. 8.
Something like that.
Brand
Benchmark.
Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
Look it up. All right, guys. So thanks so much for supporting the podcast and giving it a listen. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes so you can stay up to date on all of our content. That includes weekly episodes on Wednesdays and Sundays for you folks in Raleigh. Check out the Raleigh Rambler. If you feel so inclined, please rate and leave us a review as it helps drive our exposure to the market. Don't forget to check out our website, myshotoflife.com, and give us a follow on social media. That's at myshotoflife on Twitter and Instagram. In addition to iTunes, please check out our SoundCloud and our Stitcher, where we will be posting our episodes each and every week. Feel free to reach out to us through our various outlets with comments and suggestions on future episode topics, as well as different drinks to maybe try and to rate. And remember, as mentioned previously, if you are in or around the Raleigh area, make sure to follow along to the Raleigh Rambler podcast, which drops each and every Sunday. The podcast and related show notes will be available on our website, myshotoflife.com, and will fill you in on all of the events going on in the Raleigh area for the upcoming week.
Matthew, we appreciate you coming out,
Yeah,
being on the show.
Thank you for letting me join, guys.
Thank
No
you
problem.
for the topic
Anytime.
suggestions.
Anytime. And guys, as we sign off, always remember, drinks are better with friends.
Cheers.
Cheers. I need more.